Hi, I'm Jana Bozeman. Thank you for joining my restorative yoga class today. Before we jump into that, I just wanted to go over some of the props that it's useful to have before we do so. If you don't have these at home right now, no big deal. There are backup options that you can use that I'll go over, but I thought it would be nice to give you the lowdown of what is beneficial in a restorative class. So I recommend getting a strap. These classic yoga straps have this D-ring, which is really nice, so you can hook yourself into different props. If you don't have this, a tie would work. You could find a long belt, a long scarf, anything like that is gonna do the trick. If you are ordering a strap, I recommend doing the 8-foot or the 10-foot version. These come in all different sizes, especially if you're tall. Give yourself a little more length on the back end. So, another great thing to have, I'm gonna actually come over here to these blankets. So these are just cotton yoga blankets, I believe. They're pretty tightly knit, so they're very firm. So this is a little different than just pulling something off your bed. You could do that though. And these are wonderful. You can fold them in all different kinds of configurations, and they offer a lot of support for your body. So a couple of those can be really good, maybe even 3 or 4. It can be nice when you're doing different poses such as shoulder stand. So blocks are wonderful. These are just 8-inch foam blocks. You can get these at Target, at Ross. You can order them online. They actually have cork and wood versions of these, which are really nice and sturdy, but that's not necessary. Sometimes that can feel a little uncomfortable if you're using these blocks in a supported bridge pose. But a couple of these are great. These are also really good just for your regular yoga practice. If you're doing a vinyasa flow, I think that we can get caught up in this idea of we're not doing the poses right if we're not using props. I'm a big fan of them. They make poses more accessible. They help to keep our bodies safe. So having a chair handy for restorative can be really, really nice. This is just a chair that I got at Costco. You could use a chair from the dining room table. You just want something sturdy. Another good option is like a coffee table. You could kind of set up your practice in front of a coffee table. So when we're coming into deeper forward folds, you can rest your forehead on something. Chairs are also really nice because you can put your feet on them. So you kind of get this legs up the wall feeling. Bolster. So this is kind of like a bonus, but for restorative, it's wonderful. These come in all different shapes and sizes. This is a really great one for laying over. And they come in firm versions, less firm versions. So it's kind of up to you. It would say if you have any sensation or sensitivity in your back, you're going to want to do potentially less firmness, but it's sort of just a personal choice, like the firmness of your mattress. Sandbags. Who knew that you could have sandbags in a yoga practice? So these are definitely a bonus. You could use like a bag of rice or a bag of beans, those kind of things instead. But these can be really nice in a restorative practice. They just help you to ground down to the earth. They give you a little gravitas, which feels wonderful. And then this is just a kind of a skinny little bolster that I found and that I loved. This is great to lay over. You can lay back on it like so. It can be a nice little shoulder stretch and opener. So there is that as well. So if you don't have bolsters, no big deal. Grab a couple of blankets that you can stack together. You could also pull firm cushions off your couch. That's going to be exactly the same thing. So if you just want to pause the video now, go gather up whatever gear, whatever makeshift gear you have, do so, and then we'll get moving into our restorative yoga class. Thank you. So restorative today, the class that we've been waiting for all month. Let's go ahead and start in a nice supported back bend. So there's a few ways that you can attack this. If you have blankets, firmer blankets are nice. So we always want to have pretty firm props or makeshift props here. You can stack a couple of the blankets on top of each other. If you do happen to have a bolster, you're going to take that on your mat. It's a long way. Another variation that might work here, if you only have one blanket, you need a little more height. I don't know if that's going to work. You could take your blocks a long way. If you have more than 2, you could stack a few of those together, especially if you're taller. And assuming you don't have props, no big deal. You're just going to lay down in Shavasana. Otherwise, if you do have a prop, you are going to snuggle that bolster or those blankets up against your tailbone. And then you're going to start to lay back here. And let's all keep our knees bent. Oh, and this can be really intense. I just got some nice cracks in my back. If you're a little bit tighter in the neck, you might want to grab a blanket just to give yourself a little support. And then I want you to play with your arms. So I have very long limbs. It feels really good for me to let my arms drape over the side. If you're a little shorter, nothing wrong with that. It might feel good to rest your arms, your elbows on blocks, and you can just play around with the configuration. So as you know, with restorative, kind of takes a little bit of time to get everything set up. So we fidget around with that, but then we're in these poses for a nice long hold and things start to open up in our body. Then I want you to play with your legs here too. So probably for most of us starting out, it's going to feel really nice to have knees bent. And in fact, I recommend that you take your feet as wide as the mat, allow your knees to knock in towards each other. And then you just start to drop into that rhythm of your breath. And of course, starting out, I always think it's really nice to take an inhale and then open your mouth, sigh the breath out, sigh the day out, sigh the week out. Do that as many times as you need to. And your eyes are probably closed here. If they're not, go ahead and close them. Before you do that, if you do have a sandbag and you wanted to press or place that on your belly, who knew? Sandbags in yoga, that can feel really nice and grounding. If you go there and you feel like it constricts the breath too much, just move it off to the side. So we just play around, we see what we need. And I'm actually in my body here. Feels like I'm arching a little bit in the lumbar. So I'm going to press into my feet. I'm going to actually physically use my hands just to move the buttocks flesh towards my heels. So I'm getting a little more forward motion with my tailbone. And that just feels nice in the body. All right, so then we're just breathing here. We're not worried about our Ujjayi breath today. We're inhaling through the nose, we're exhaling through the nose. But it's nice and easy, and we're really trying to stretch the breath out. This supported Shavasana, getting this nice, gentle heart opening, this back bend. There's a lot of space for the breath to move. You can really feel the inhale here. So bring your attention to that. Get curious about that. How much can you fill up on that inhale? How much can you expand? And then as you exhale, you're feeling everything contract in. Maybe as you're exhaling too, see if you can relax those places in your body that might be grabbing a little bit. And that happens starting out, even in these restorative poses. And don't mistake restorative for easy. In many ways, it's quite challenging. So we're tight, holding these poses for a long time. Eventually, it starts to feel good. But initially, these poses can be pretty intense in our body. We have these habitual places where we hold on, where we get tight. For most of us, it's the shoulders, the neck. Inner leg is a big place. We can kind of overarch in the lower back. So all of these spots, trying to bring them to an easy place, to neutral. Good. So we're going to be here a few more minutes. As much as possible, you're bringing your attention to your body, you're bringing your attention to your breath. That being said, thoughts are going to come in. That's okay. You're going to be distracted by sounds happening around you. Your attention is going to go there. That's fine. Anytime you notice that your attention has wandered, or you're time traveling, you're thinking about something that happened, or worrying about the future, come back to your breath, come back to this moment, come back to this pose. And just smile at yourself. You should be feeling this nice opening happening in your heart. So you're stretching across those pectorals. You're feeling those shoulder blades release over your bolster or your blankets. And you're soaking up this quiet. That can be really challenging to do as well. So we're in perpetual motion. So much information coming at us all the time. We think that we need to be doing multiple things at the same time. It's not enough to just go for a walk. We have to listen to a podcast. Just challenge yourself to be in this stillness, even if it's a little uncomfortable. Even if it feels like you're not doing much of anything, you're actually doing really beautiful work here already. Let's just warm up the shoulders here. So everybody take a nice deep inhale. Open your mouth, exhale, ha, and you can keep your eyes closed. You might want to peek forward. We're just going to do like some snow angel arms. So you can, if you've got blocks by your side, you can move them out of the way. And the arms don't have to be straight per se, especially as I'm coming up in this configuration, my elbows are bending, but it's this nice little stretch in the inseam of the shoulder. I just want to do this before we move into a long held twist to help release the back after this really nice long back bend. So just a few more rounds, just moving nice and slow, kind of like a little mini restorative vinyasa here. Good, and then stretch the arms up. If you want to kind of lift them up, straighten them, palms face towards each other, that might feel good. Perhaps straighten your legs. I just got a good crack in my ankle. Point through your toes. Feel the stretch on the front of the leg. And then we're going to bend our knees again. You're going to very gently, moving nice and slow. If you have a sandbag, you can move that out of the way. We're gonna roll off of our bolster, just coming to one side. Then you're gonna press up to seated. We're just gonna get this out of the way. So as we come into this twist, if you happen to know that you're tight in your shoulders, you're gonna wanna have either your bolster or some blocks, just for a little support underneath your shoulders. So we're gonna move this out of the way. You're gonna come onto your right side, knees bent, so you're in the fetal position. So your right arm is out perpendicular from your right shoulder, left palm on top. As you're here, if this feels uncomfortable in your neck, this would also be a good place to rest your head on a block or a strap. And then if you know that you're tighter in the shoulders, that blanket is gonna come to the left side, kind of underneath that left shoulder when it starts to release down. So we're just taking a couple breaths here, fetal position. And then we're gonna inhale, stretch this left arm up and over. It's making this giant rainbow, and then you reach out. So you might start to roll to the back of the center of your head. So if your eyes are open, you'd be looking up at the ceiling. I recommend eyes closed for this class. We want to get internal as much as possible. We're trying to do the opposite of what we usually do, which is to be really turned on. We're trying to get really quiet and still. Closing the eyes helps to facilitate that. When we look around, we start to think about things. We start to compare ourselves if we're in a class together. So finally here, you might begin to roll to that left cheek any amount. That's going to stretch the neck out a bit. And if that left shoulder is dangling in the air, do put a prop underneath. And then find that rhythm of your breath again if you've lost it. Notice how the breath feels a little different in this twist. So always harder to get a nice deep inhale when you are in a twisted configuration, just because everything is constricted in, but do the best that you can. If you're finding it challenging today to stay with the breath, if there's a lot of thoughts coming in and out of the mind, a really good strategy, kind of a technique to help you focus is to count your breath just in your mind. So inhaling to the count of 6 or 7 or 8. Observe that pause that happens at the top of the breath. There's nothing happening. And then you exhale to that same number. Also observing the pause that happens at the bottom of the breath. And those pauses, they're interesting. There's nothing happening. We're neither inhaling nor exhaling. It's this perfect stillness. So we want to infuse that feeling into this restorative practice. Let's do about 3 more really good breaths here. Maybe you're starting to feel a little more stretch and opening across your heart and chest. So you're really feeling those shoulder blades heavy down on the mat underneath you. So deep, full inhale, expanding across your heart and chest. As you exhale, your left palm is going to come on top of your right palm. And just pause here a moment. And then we're going to come to the second side. So you're just going to roll over to your left side. You're going to move that blanket if you were using that for your shoulder support. And actually, let me just demo what that looks like on this side. So we're on the left side, just taking a few breaths here in our fetal position. Left arm out, perpendicular from your shoulder, right palm resting on top, knees bent in. And then as you inhale, stretch those fingers up towards the ceiling as you make that rainbow. And so if you come this direction, you can see, minus my puffy sleeves, that my shoulder isn't resting down. So this is where you slide a prop, and guys can often be very tight in the shoulders, in the chest, so you might need a little more. So just find a place where you feel supported and comfortable. And maybe you're moving towards bringing your gaze out over those right fingertips, starting to roll towards that right cheek. And this side might be a little different in your body. And it's good to remember as we come into these restorative poses, we really do want to be picky about how we're feeling. So if at any point, especially in these longer holds, things can start to get intense sometimes. So we can start to open up, but sometimes it starts to feel like too much. So you can always back out a little bit. So that might mean just pressing to the center of your head instead of being on that right cheek here. Maybe it feels like you need a prop, a blanket or a block between your thighs just for a little support there. That might be nice if you have some sciatic stuff going on, if there's any sensation in the lumbar or the SI joint. Are you gripping or holding anywhere that you don't need to? So just check in. We have to do that often. Couple more good breaths here. Really widen across your heart and chest as much as possible. Use your exhale to help melt your shoulder blades down into the mat, into the earth, into the parking lot if you're Jules. Nice deep inhale, fill up. As you exhale, start to bring that right palm on top of your left palm. Take a couple of breaths here. And then moving nice and easy, hands help to press up. Okay, so we are going to move into some hip stretches. If you know that you tend to be tight in the hips, and especially even if you're not, if you're a little more open, you might want to do a variation where you're sitting up on a blanket today. And that just helps you to get a little more release. I'm going to give you a few different variations that you can do here. So let's all start with our right shin crossing in front of our left shin. Now, typically we come into our deep forward fold here. I want you to go less deep than you can. I want you to use some kind of prop. So if you do happen to have a bolster, these can be really nice because you can angle them and then rest your head. I'm going to give you the side view here. And then hands just go someplace that feels comfortable. So we're going to be here for a few minutes. You might be able eventually, as we hold this a little longer, to start to move in deeper. So if you happen to be really tight, this is where a coffee table in front of you, if you're at home, or if you have a chair handy, this can be really nice. So you can just simply rest your arms, cross your forearms, rest them on the chair. You can play around with holding on to the chair. So lots of little things. Just find a place where you can be. It's a really nice in a restorative class to be resting our forehead on something. So I want you to try to accomplish that. It might mean that you have to stack up a bunch of props. You might have to get a little creative, move around. And it's going to be subtle here, but you should be getting a nice little stretch in that outer right hip. I want you to find lots of length in your spine, especially on that inhale. As you exhale, you can root down into your sit bones. And if your hips are screaming here, back out. It is perfectly acceptable to be really, really upright. Find that rhythm of your breath again. If you've lost it. So a big piece of our restorative yoga practice is shifting gears, slowing down. We spend the bulk of our days in the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight, flight, freeze mode. Trying to get things done at work, at home. We're juggling a lot of things. And this can really start to cause a lot of stress in the body, stress in the head. It can make us anxious, even depressed. We start to feel these aches and pains in our body, often because we're not breathing, we're not taking care of ourselves. So this restorative yoga practice is really an opportunity to counteract that. So we begin to move into the parasympathetic nervous system. We trigger that by this deep, calm, steady breathing. Being in these held poses helps us to get there. And when we drop into this parasympathetic nervous system, this is when we get into the rest, restore, the heal mode. And this is also an opportunity for us to check in with ourselves. So that place inside of us that is wise and creative and calm and knows what we need, but that place that gets tuned out a lot. So I want you to find that piece of yourself and just listen, get curious about it. Maybe there's something you need to know. Let's do about 3 or 4 more breaths here on this right side of this more passive hip stretch. On your next inhale, moving nice and slow, start to roll on up. And we're going to take the second side. So it might feel good to just stretch the legs out, give them a little bounce here. And then we're going to come to the left side. So the left shin is crossing in front. Depending upon how you're built, your legs might be out a little wider. And then find a prop. So pay attention to your body. You know your body. I want you to go less deep than you can. That's not the name of the game today. So you're backing out a little bit. But you are resting your forehead either on a bolster or blocks or your chair. And this just has this nice calming quality, kind of takes some of the work out of the pose. So we're not necessarily going for this big, big stretch. We are going for the quiet. We are going for the long hold. And in this context, things slowly start to open up. So you're going to find that you might melt in just a little more. You might also be like, hey, enough is enough. I could go deeper, but I'm not going to today. I actually really support that choice. If you've lost your breath, come back to it. Maybe put your brain and your sit bones here, so really feel them anchoring down into the earth. As they anchor there, you get that stretch in your spine through the sides of your waist. How does this side feel different in your body, especially in the hips? There's always one side that's a little more intense sensation-wise. Maybe check in with your face, your jaw, make sure everything is soft and relaxed there. Really soaking up the sound of your breath. Good. As you inhale, start to roll on up. And we're going to do one more little kind of a hip opener, more of a little groin stretch, and then the spinal lengthening forward fold. So we're going to come into our Upavista legs. So our wide-legged pose. And if you are in a space where you're on a harder surface, I do recommend opening up on your mat and just having your heels rest down on the mat. And then if you do happen to have sandbags here, these are lovely in this restorative version. And they just come on top of the thigh. If you're at home, bags of rice or beans can approximate this feeling. If you have a couple of cats or small children, you can just throw them on your thighs if they're handy. All right. So often in this pose, when we're being more active doing our vinyasa flow practice and cooling down at the end, we're mindful to keep the toes pointing up towards the ceiling. I'm not so concerned about your legs being active today. Again, we're going to begin to forward fold here. So this is a great place to have many blocks, a chair, a coffee table. And I suggest, this is a very challenging pose in most people's bodies, so I would be pretty upright. You can always go deeper. Sometimes we try to go for it. So less is more. And this is another great pose to use the chair. So just play around. So not necessarily going for this big stretch, trying to find this lengthening in the body. Listening to the sound of the breath. And then maybe melting in the tiniest amount more, if that feels right in your body. So at this stage of the game, we're a little more than halfway through class. So most of us have probably kind of found our groove here, our quiet groove. It's akin to that flow state that we get in, maybe even a little better. And if you're still not there, some days it's really hard. Some days we're extra stressed. We've got big events coming up, lots going on. That's okay. Be good with where you're at. Be kind to yourself. Keep reminding yourself to come back to that rhythm of your breath. And as we practice this over and over again, it gets easier. Let's do about 4 or 5 breaths here. Good. Next inhale, start to roll on out of this posture. If you have the sandbags on your thighs, you can move them out of the way. And then we've been in this for a while, so just take your hands underneath your knees. Ooh, bring a little life back to the legs. And we are going to come into a supported bridge pose next. So there's a lot of ways that you can attack this today. Assuming that you have a bolster, one variation would be, and you can just watch this really quick, to start on your back, kind of this regular bridge pose setup that we have, and then press into your feet, slide the bolster underneath you. So I make that look easy. Again, I have really long limbs. That's a little trickier to do if you don't have somebody there to slide the bolster underneath you. So the other variation here that you can do, which is nice, is to sit on that bolster. And you're gonna have to make little adjustments here, kind of lower down to your elbows, and then come into it. And you play with this place where the arms feel good. If you don't have a bolster, you can use a couple of blankets, and again, probably easier to stack a couple on top of each other, sit on them, and then melt back. You can also use a block here, and we do this often in our regular vinyasa flow classes, and it's the same effect. So you would press into your feet, slide that block, and you want it to be underneath your sacrum. So the sacrum is that flat spot at the bottom of your tailbone. Often what happens here is we get it up kind of in the lumbar, so you can see how my buns are releasing towards the mat. This is really awful. It's putting a lot of pressure on the lower back. I would not want to be here for a very long time. So I'm going to simply drag it closer to my heels, and you'll know it when you find it. It's not that there is an effort in this pose, but it should feel good. You're pressing into the center of your head. Again, if you have a sandbag close, you might want to lay that on your belly. It just feels really grounding here. And you can play with arms. So by your side, getting that heart opening. Sometimes cactus arms feel good here. So you just pretend that you saguaro cactus in Arizona. You might also take both hands on your belly. One hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. And you're paying attention to your breath again. How does it feel physically? What is happening inside your body as you take these nice, deep, steady inhales How does the shape of your body shift? And then as you exhale, as everything contracts in, what happens? Have you started to grip anywhere inside of your body? In this pose, that can happen in the inner leg. Also, what happens here is we can start to wing our knees out. So we start to roll to the outer edges of the feet. So keep pressing evenly into your feet. Notice if there's tension in your shoulders or neck. Make any little adjustments that you need to here so that you can be comfortable for a couple more minutes. Good. So take a deep, deep inhale. Open your mouth. Sigh the breath out. Ha. And depending upon what your setup looks like, you're going to exit this a couple different ways. So if you're on a block, you're going to just press into your feet, lift your hips up. If you're on that bolster, it might actually feel easiest to just roll off one side or the other. You're certainly welcome to press into your feet and let it go. But again, the bolsters are a little more awkward. So just coming into the fetal position here on the right side is good, and you can just hang there for a moment. And we're all going to eventually press on up. And just to release that back bend that we did, we're going to come into another twist here. So a little mermaid twist. So you are going to want to have a bolster or a couple of blankets stacked on top of each other. So they're going to go the long way. We're going to mermaid our legs. I don't know if this is how mermaids are. I think so. You're going to snuggle this bolster up nice and tight against that right hip. One hand on either side of this bolster. So you can see we're going to start to bring those left ribs to face towards that bolster. They're not going to get there exactly. So we kind of want to lay our belly down. We want to feel this left side as we hold this pose. Eventually start to release a little more. If you do have a sandbag, it's a little harder when you don't have your teacher right there in the room with you to place it. You could place it on this left hip. I sometimes like to do 2 sandbags here. I'll try to do this on my own so you can get a picture of what that looks like. Oh, Zoom yoga. There's certain things that you just can't approximate All right, so you can kind of see there, and they might fall off. It's all right. As you inhale, really focus on getting that length through the sides of your waist. As you exhale, feel those left ribs release down. Twists are really healthy for the spine. All of this work is really good for the spine, but twists are really nice. They help to bring things back to neutral after we've been back bending. Twists are really good for our internal organs. This is one of the reasons I love yoga so much, is all of the twisting that we do. It doesn't happen a lot in other kinds of fitness classes. So just giving everything a little squeeze out. It's very detoxifying. It's great for the intestines, the organs of digestion. So you have the option here, if you would like to stretch your neck a little bit, to start to flip onto your left cheek. Now this can feel wicked intense. So you might go there and be like, this is awful. I've lost my restorative vibe, in which case you come back onto that right cheek. And in fact, you might just want to stay there. But it is an option. You want to go a little deeper. If you've lost your breath, come back to your breath. And hopefully you're just in this sweet space, feeling really calm. It's interesting, sometimes we need permission to do that. If you flipped onto your left cheek, flip back onto your right cheek. So just finding that classic mermaid, supported mermaid pose here. Nice deep inhale. Full complete exhale. And then on your inhale, nice and easy, moving slow, less is more. Start to upright yourself. And I think the easiest way to do this is to just flip the bolster to the other side. You could also just turn around so they're both good. We are bringing that left hip, snuggling it up against the bolster, knees bent, one hand on either side of your bolster. And just start to walk yourself in. You're trying to spin those right ribs down. So you're moving towards keeping both sides of your waist nice and easy. And then you find a place with arms that feels good. Moving into this posture for a couple of minutes. Send that exhale to places that might be tight. Use the inhale to create new space and ease. If you'd like to flip onto your right cheek, just move nice and slow. Pay careful attention. It might not work on this side. You might come into this and decide, I'm going back to where I was. This is another thing that I love about yoga. It really teaches us to pay attention to our bodies, to notice things, to make little adjustments and changes. We get really good at that on our yoga mats, but we start to pay attention to our bodies when we're off the yoga mat as well. This is a really important skill to develop. Nice deep inhale, expand, fill up. And then full complete exhale. And just use your hands on your next inhale to help you press on up. We are going to set up for our Supta Baddha Konasana. So we're going to be using lots of props here. And if you don't have props, you can just take the shape without them. But go ahead and have a strap if you do have one available. If you don't, it's not necessary. So it just kind of gives us a little more. So I'm going to try to show a couple of angles here. So essentially, the bolster is going to be against the small of our back, and we're going to lay back over that. But we're bringing our legs into this configuration. So a couple of options. You just might be here like this. If you don't have a strap with you, no big deal. If you do have blocks or books, you're going to slide them under your knees or thighs. This can be a really intense stretch on the groin. So we just want to back that out a little bit, especially if you're a little tighter. If you do have a strap, you're going to unfurl it. This is the hardest part. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just do the best you can. So the strap comes to the small of the back behind you. The tails of the strap come over your legs, and then you're going to take one end underneath your feet, and then you're going to strap yourself in. So this is just really nice because it helps you to pull these legs in a little deeper. I would urge you to go less far than you think you need to, because this does get intense. We're going to just hold it for a couple of minutes today. And even here with the strap, you might have some blocks underneath your knees. And I'm going to flip around here so you can kind of get the side view. So you're either laying back on those blankets or that bolster. And again, just find a place that feels really good with your arms. So by your side might be nice. You might want to have your hands or arms up on blankets. You could have hands on belly, hand on heart, hand on belly. You might have sandbags over the insides of your thighs or on your belly. So Supta Baddha Konasana. Supta Baddha what? So if you're newer to this pose, eventually you're going to love this pose, but it can be a little effort to get into it. And it's certainly some big stretches. So again, prop up, blocks, books underneath thighs is really great here. Maybe a little less tight with the strap. It's a beautiful pose to feel the breath. And we're really good at the breath at this point. So that rib cage is expanding a lot. There's this beautiful openness across your heart and chest. You might even feel this in the backs of your shoulders tomorrow. It turns out restorative can make you sore. Good. So we're going to melt towards our Shavasana. So if you've got a strap, you might be able to just snuggle your feet in a little bit and then just release your legs out. You might need to roll up and undo your strap. Just end with legs extended. You might want to place something underneath your knees. So a blanket there can just be a nice little release. If you're near a chair, you could actually take your legs up onto the chair. So coming into this supported Shavasana, let's all take a deep inhale here together. Open your mouth, sigh the breath out. Ha. Just start to melt in here. Soaking up these final moments of stillness. Asato ma satgamaya. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. Mrityoma mritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Let your next inhale be deeper. Sigh the breath out. Ha. Begin to wiggle your fingers and toes, so bringing some gentle movement back to your body. You'll want to bend your knees. As you're ready, you're going to roll off your blankets or your bolster to one side. Just pause there a moment. So back in the fetal position. And staying soft and quiet. Use your hands to help you press up to a comfortable seat. Notice how good you feel here. So you just made a deposit into your wellness bank, into your anti-stress bank. Send yourself love and gratitude for that. And just promise yourself that you're going to try to hold on to some of this great feeling that you've created with you into the rest of the day, the rest of the week ahead. If you lose it, maybe just make the commitment that you're going to just pause and breathe and get quiet, maybe even one of these restorative poses. So we don't have to do it for an hour, just doing it for 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes makes a huge difference. Place your palms in a pile on top of your heart. Bow your head with a smile. Beautiful work today. Thank you.